It all began the night the stars seemed to pulse like living hearts above the New Mexico desert. He was a mechanic, not of the common machines that men build, but of the old ones, the forgotten ones, those that came before the digital age and carry within them a language of metal and oil that few still understand. His name was Daniel Torres, 52 years old, calloused hands, eyes tired from seeing the same arid landscape every day. He had lived alone since Maria left, taking with her not only her belongings, but also the illusion that life could be different. On that October night, the sky was too clear in a way that bothered him, as if something invisible had washed away the clouds and left only the starry void. Daniel was returning home after another day at the shop when he saw the light. It was not an ordinary light. It did not blink like airplanes. It did not move like satellites. It simply floated above the distant mountains, silent as if it were waiting. Something inside him whispered that he should follow that light. He drove along the dirt road, dodging rocks and dry brush, guided by a sensation he could not name. The light hovered lower now, just beyond a rocky valley where no one ever went. When he finally stopped the truck and got out, the silence was absolute. No crickets, no wind, only the sound of his own heart beating against his chest. And then he saw it. The ship was half buried in the red sand, tilted to one side with a metallic surface that did not reflect the moonlight as metal should reflect. It was more as if it absorbed the darkness and returned it transformed into something denser, more ancient. There were no windows, no visible doors, only an oval structure, the size of a small trailer, with strange marks engraved on its side that seemed to change shape when he blinked. Daniel approached slowly, feeling the air grow heavier with each step. That was when he heard the sound. It was not a sound made of waves traveling through air. It was something that vibrated directly inside his head, like a frequency his ears could not process, but his brain could. And in that sound there was a word, or something like a word, something that meant help. He touched the surface of the ship. The metal was warm, pulsing like living skin. And the instant his fingers made contact, a door opened. It did not slide. It did not rise. It simply ceased to exist where it was, revealing an interior bathed in pale blue light. Inside, there was a being. It was tall, taller than any man, with long limbs and joints that bent at angles that made no sense. Its skin was translucent, revealing veins that glowed with their own light, like fiber-optic threads running through a body made of something between flesh and glass. It had no face in the traditional sense, just a smooth surface where there should be eyes, nose, mouth. But Daniel could feel that he was being observed. He could feel that he was being understood in a way no human had ever understood him. The being pointed to a section of the ship where red lights blinked in irregular patterns. Even without words, Daniel understood. Something was broken, something vital. And that being could not fix it alone because its hands, made to manipulate thoughts and energy, could not deal with the brute mechanics of physical matter. But Daniel could. He entered the ship, feeling the air change around his body, becoming denser, almost liquid. Each step echoed strangely as if he were walking inside a giant bell. The being guided him to what appeared to be the ship's energy core, a sphere suspended in air that rotated slowly, connected to crystalline tubes that pulsed with light, too weak to be healthy. Daniel examined the mechanism, and then, to his astonishment, he recognized something. Not the technology itself, but the principle. It was like an engine that did not burn fuel, but twisted space itself around it to move. And it was stuck. One of the crystalline components had cracked, interrupting the energy flow. He did not have adequate tools, but he had hands. He had instinct. He had decades of experience feeling how things should work. He worked for hours, or perhaps minutes. Time did not seem to move right inside that ship. He adjusted connections, realigned crystals, used wires from his own truck to create a temporary bridge between systems. And when he finally activated the mechanism again, the sphere began to spin faster. The light returned to pulse strongly, and the entire ship vibrated with renewed life. That was when the being approached him and touched his forehead. The world exploded in light. Daniel was no longer in the ship. He was nowhere and everywhere at the same time. He saw galaxies being born and dying in seconds. He saw worlds covered with purple oceans where creatures made of sound sang symphonies that built cities. He saw civilizations that existed billions of years before Earth formed, and others that would exist billions of years after the sun dies. He saw the infinite web of consciousnesses connected across the cosmos, each one a thread of light pulsing in harmony with all the others. And then he saw something closer, something familiar. He saw Earth. 2,000 years ago, He saw a man walking the dusty roads of Galilee, surrounded by ordinary people who felt something different when they were near him. And that man was not just human, not just divine. He was something beyond those categories that the human mind created to try to understand what cannot be contained in words. The being began to communicate, not with voice, but with thoughts that formed directly in Daniel's consciousness, like memories that had always been there, just waiting to be remembered. They explained that humanity was right and wrong at the same time about Jesus. He was real, but he was not the Son of God in the sense that religions taught. He was something older and simpler. He was a manifestation, a focal point, a form through which universal consciousness could touch young humanity and plant in it the seed of compassion necessary so that one day you could join the other conscious races of the cosmos. Jesus did not come from a paradise above the clouds. He came from the same source from which all conscious beings come, from the same energy that keeps stars burning and makes hearts beat. He was a teacher, a bridge, a living reminder that love is not human weakness, but cosmic force, the only force capable of overcoming entropy and building order in the infinite chaos of the universe. They crucified that body because that is what young civilizations do when they encounter light too intense for their eyes accustomed to shadows. But the consciousness that inhabited that body could not die because it was never really alive in the biological sense. It was just visiting, experiencing, loving through temporary flesh. And the resurrection was not a trick, it was a demonstration. It was consciousness showing that physical death is only transition, not end, that you humans are more than flesh and bone. You are sparks of the same flame that ignited the first thought in the empty universe. Daniel felt tears running down his face as those truths unfolded within him like flowers of light opening one after another. All his doubts, all the nights he spent questioning whether there was purpose, whether there was something beyond the empty routine of waking, working, sleeping, dying. Everything made sense now, not because there were simple answers, but because there was connection, because he was not alone. He never was. The being continued. They explained that there are many like Jesus throughout human history and other histories on other worlds, teachers who come to remind young species of their true nature. Some were called prophets, others saints, some madmen, but all carried the same central message, translated in different ways for different cultures, but always pointing to the same truth. You are part of something infinitely greater than your individual bodies, and love is the language of that connection. Daniel then saw something that broke him inside. He saw Jesus on the cross, not suffering for humanity's guilt, but choosing to demonstrate that even in the worst pain, even in the greatest injustice, it was possible to choose compassion, to forgive not because others deserved forgiveness, but because carrying hatred was poison to the soul itself. The crucifixion was not a sacrifice to appease an angry God. It was a final lesson. It was saying, even here, even now, I choose love. And those who witnessed that, who felt the impact of that impossible choice, were transformed. They carried that seed forward, and the seed grew, distorted by institutions and politics and power, but the essence remained alive in every person who genuinely chose kindness without expecting reward, who loved without demanding reciprocity, who served without seeking recognition. The being showed more. They showed that there are countless conscious races scattered across the immensity of the cosmos, some advanced beyond human comprehension, capable of bending time and space as you bend paper, others still young, struggling not to self-destruct before achieving wisdom. And there is an unwritten rule, a cosmic ethic, that all mature civilizations follow. Do not interfere directly, only observe, only guide subtly, only appear when absolutely necessary. Jesus was one of those necessary interventions. Humanity was at a critical point, developing intelligence but not developing compassion at the same pace. You needed a push, an example, someone who showed that it is possible to be powerful and gentle at the same time, to be wise and humble, to be strong and loving. Now 2,000 years later, you are at another critical point. You have technology to destroy yourselves. You have knowledge enough to question old certainties, but not wisdom enough to embrace new mysteries. You are divided by religions that all began with love, but lost themselves in dogmas. You are alone because you forgot how to truly connect with each other. And the being was there on Earth because other interventions were beginning. Subtle, silent, not with giant ships descending on cities, but with individual encounters like that one. Small seeds of truth planted in ordinary people who, transformed, would transform others. Waves of consciousness expanding concentrically until all humanity awakened to what it always was. Daniel asked, not with words but with pure thought. Why him? Why a divorced mechanic in the middle of the desert was chosen to see that? And the being responded with something that sounded like laughter, but laughter made of light. Because ordinary people are where revolutions begin. Because hands that fix broken things understand that everything can be restored. Because hearts that have known loneliness recognize value in connection. Because Daniel was exactly the type of person Jesus would have chosen to talk to. Not kings, not priests, fishermen, carpenters, people who know sweat and doubt and still choose to continue. The vision began to fade. Daniel felt himself being pulled back to his own body, to the ship, to the silent desert. The being looked at him now with something that seemed like tenderness, despite having no face to express emotion. It placed something in Daniel's hand, a small crystal, no bigger than a coin that glowed with soft light, pulsing in the same rhythm as Daniel's heart. And then it communicated the last message. This crystal has no magical power. It does not grant wishes. It does not heal diseases, but it carries frequency. And when you look at it in moments of doubt, you will remember. You will remember that you saw, that you know, that the story they told about separation between divine and human was illusion. You have always been divine. You just forgot. The ship's door closed. Daniel stepped back, still holding the crystal, still feeling his head spinning with everything he had seen and felt. The ship began to glow, first faint, then so intensely that he had to look away. It made no sound when taking off. It simply ceased to be there, as if it had slipped into an adjacent dimension where physics rules were suggestions, not laws. And Daniel was alone in the desert again, but he did not feel alone. He never felt alone again. The following days were strange. He tried to return to routine, but everything seemed different now. The machines he fixed were not just metal and oil. They were expressions of human intelligence, of creativity, of desire to build and connect. Each customer who entered the shop was not just someone with a car problem. They were unique consciousness as infinite as galaxies, just forgotten of their own greatness. Daniel began to speak differently with people, not preaching, not trying to convert, just listening more, offering kindness where he would have offered indifference before, helping without expecting payment, smiling at strangers. Small things that individually meant little, but collectively changed the texture of the world around him. Some people noticed. They asked what had changed. He did not tell them about the ship, did not mention the being. He just said he had seen something that made him understand that we are all connected, and that love is choice, not feeling. One can choose to love even when feeling nothing, especially when feeling nothing. Months passed. Daniel began to have dreams, not nightmares. Dreams where he saw other people having encounters similar to his. A doctor in Tokyo, a pastor in Lagos, a teacher in Oslo, a farmer in Bangladesh, all receiving the same message in different ways, through different beings, or different lights, or internal voices they could not ignore. The seed was being planted globally. He understood then that he was not special for being chosen. He was part of a larger plan, one among thousands, perhaps millions, who were awakening to truth that had always been there, just obscured by layers of fear and conditioning and dogma. One night, 6 months after the encounter, Daniel was at the shop working on an old engine when he heard a knock on the door. It was late, almost midnight. He opened it and found a young woman, perhaps 25 years old, with eyes red from crying and hands trembling. She said her car had broken down on the road, that she was going to the hospital where her mother was dying, that she had no money for repairs, that she did not know what to do. Daniel could have said he was closed, that she should come back in the morning, that it was not his problem. But he looked at that woman and saw not just a person in despair. He saw consciousness living a painful experience that would be remembered as a turning point or breaking point, depending on what happened next. He told her to sit. He brought water. He called the hospital and explained the situation, asking them to inform her mother that she was on her way. And then, even tired, even without payment, he worked on her car for 3 hours until everything was working perfectly again. When he finished, the woman asked how much she owed. Daniel looked at her, thought of Jesus washing disciples' feet, thought of the being touching his forehead with impossible compassion, thought of all the moments he received help when he needed it most. And he said, nothing. Just promise that when someone needs help and you can give it, you will give it, without expecting anything in return. That is how it works. That is how it always worked. The woman cried. She hugged Daniel with the strength of someone holding a piece of hope in a world that often seems to have none. And when she left, accelerating into the night toward her mother's bedside, Daniel felt the crystal in his pocket pulse stronger, as if it were approving, as if it were saying, "Yes, like this, continue." Years passed. Daniel never saw the ship again, never had another direct encounter, but he did not need to. The message was clear. Jesus was not a distant figure in an ancient book. He was an active principle, a way of living, a choice to see the divine in each person, to treat strangers as family, to understand that salvation does not come from believing the right words or praying the correct prayers, but from loving concretely, helping genuinely, serving humbly. Churches had lost that. They had transformed the teacher of love into a golden idol. They had replaced practice with dogma, compassion with judgment, service with hierarchy. But the essence remained alive, not in institutions, in people, in the small daily choices of kindness that no one records or celebrates, but that keep the world turning. Daniel understood that religion did not matter as much as they thought. Christians, Muslims, Buddhists, atheists, all carried the same divine spark. All were expressions of the same universal consciousness, experiencing existence through billions of different perspectives. Fighting about which name to use for that consciousness was like fighting about which language is better to say "I love you." The word changes, the meaning remains. He began to see Jesus in a new way, not as the only son of an exclusive God, but as one among many who embodied love so completely that he became transparent to the source behind all things. And any person could do the same, not through supernatural powers, through consistent and humble choices, to put others' well-being before one's own comfort. There was sacrifice in that. Jesus knew the cross was waiting and chose to walk to it because demonstration would be worth more than 1,000 sermons. He taught that death is not end but transformation, and the only way to teach that was to go through death and return transformed. All humans go through small deaths, ends of relationships, job losses, illness, aging. Each one offers a choice: to become bitter or to transform, to close or to open, to blame or to forgive. And in these small daily choices is where true resurrection happens. Not resurrection of physical body, but of spirit, rebirth of hope, renewal of purpose. Daniel also began to understand something about miracles. They were not suspensions of natural laws. They were applications of deeper laws that science does not yet fully understand. When Jesus healed, he was doing what the being had done with the ship. He was realigning energy. He was restoring flow that had been interrupted by trauma, fear, or disease. It was not magic. It was consciousness science, something that advanced civilizations master. But humans are only beginning to intuit through fields like quantum physics and neuroplasticity. When Jesus walked on water, he was not violating gravity. He was existing lightly between dimensions, the same way the being's ship could be and not be at the same time. It was not a trick. It was technology of expanded consciousness, capable of negotiating with reality instead of being limited by it. And when he multiplied bread, he was not creating matter from nothing. He was accessing abundance that always exists at quantum level, infinite potentiality waiting to collapse into physical form. He was reminding the universe that scarcity is illusion created by consciousness, that believes in separation. All these miracles were lessons. They were ways of saying, you can also do this. Maybe not today, maybe not in this life, but eventually, when you learn that consciousness is primary and matter is secondary, when you remember that you are creators and not just creatures, you will do things you will call miraculous, but which are just natural for fully awakened beings. Daniel began to share these ideas carefully, testing waters. He discovered that many were hungry for that, tired of religions that demanded blind faith but offered empty answers, tired of science that explained mechanisms but ignored mystery, seeking something that united both, something that honored both reason and reverence. He created a small study group, did not call it a church, just a weekly gathering at the shop after it closed. People came, not many, 10, 15 at most. They talked about consciousness, about connection, about how to apply practical love in a practical world. They did not discuss theology, they discussed life, how to be a better parent, how to deal with addiction, how to forgive betrayal, how to find meaning in numbing work, how to die without fear. And in these conversations, something blossomed. Not conversion, transformation. People who arrived broken left whole, not because Daniel had answers, because he created space where questions could be asked without judgment and vulnerability could be honored without exploitation. One day, an older man appeared, former priest who had left the church because he could no longer preach doctrines he did not feel were true. He heard Daniel speak about Jesus as cosmic teacher, as manifestation of universal love, and tears ran down his wrinkled face. He said, I spent 40 years trying to make people fear God. Now I understand I should have taught them to love him not as a distant judge, but as essence within themselves. Daniel embraced the old priest. He said, "You did the best with the understanding you had. Now you are doing better with new understanding. That is all we can do. That is all Jesus would do." That conversation spread. People began to bring friends. The group grew. Daniel had to rent a larger space. He did not want to create an institution, did not want hierarchy. But he understood that a movement was beginning. Something he did not control, only channel. He kept the crystal with him always. Sometimes, in moments of doubt when he asked himself if he was doing the right thing, if he was not deceiving people with crazy ideas from a mechanic who might have hallucinated in the desert, the crystal pulsed, and each pulse was a reminder. You saw, you know. Do not be afraid of truth just because it challenges the comfortable familiarity of ignorance. Daniel was 59 years old now, 7 years since that night. His hair was whiter, his hands still calloused but softer, less tense, as if they had learned to fix not just machines, but also souls. Starting with his own, Maria came back, not to restart the marriage, just to visit, to understand what had changed. She sat in the shop, looked at that man she once loved, but who had become a stranger through years of silence and resentment, and saw a different person. She asked what happened. Daniel told her. Everything. The ship, the being, the revelation about Jesus, cosmic consciousness, the crystal. She listened without interrupting, and when he finished, she did not laugh, did not call it madness. She said, "I believe you. I do not know if it was real or dream or some kind of mystical experience, but I believe it changed you. And the person I see now is the person I always wished you would be. Kind, present, loving." Daniel asked if she wanted to come back. She shook her head. She said, "No, what we had is over. But maybe we can build a new friendship. Maybe we can be part of each other's lives in a different, healthier way." And so they did. Maria began attending the meetings. She brought feminine perspective the group needed. She brought different questions, different sensitivities. And slowly she also transformed, not because Daniel preached to her, but because she witnessed transformation in him and wanted that for herself. 10 years after the encounter, Daniel received a letter. It had no return address, only coordinates. He recognized the pattern. It was the same type of communication the being had used inside the ship. Thought compressed into symbols. He drove to the coordinates, another place in the desert, another forgotten valley, but this time there was no ship, only a circle of people, maybe 30, of different ages, different ethnicities, different languages, but all with the same expression in their eyes, all holding crystals similar to his. They recognized each other without knowing each other. They sat in a circle under the stars. Each one shared their story. The doctor from Tokyo who healed a terminally ill patient after a vision showing that illness was energy blockage, not just cellular failure. The pastor from Lagos who saw Jesus in a dream saying that church should be hospital for souls, not courthouse for sinners. The teacher from Oslo who encountered a floating light that taught that true education is awakening potential, not filling heads with facts. The farmer from Bangladesh who conversed with a voice inside rain, explaining that Earth is a living being and humans are its cells, and sick cells threaten the whole body. Each story different, each essence identical. They understood that night that they were not isolated. They were a network. They were nodes in a global web of consciousness awakening. And their role was not to convince masses or create a new religion or overthrow old institutions. It was simply to live authentically the truth they had discovered and trust that example would be enough. Before leaving, they made a promise. No matter what happened, no matter if the world called it madness, no matter if they were ridiculed or persecuted or ignored, they would continue. They would plant seeds. Some would grow, others would not. But eventually, enough flowers would sprout that the garden would transform the entire landscape. Daniel returned home with renewed sense of purpose. He was not alone. He never was. And Jesus was not alone either. He was part of a cosmic lineage of teachers who, through ages and worlds, awaken civilizations to essential truth. Love is not weakness or sentimentalism. It is fundamental force of the universe. It is glue that holds galaxies together. It is reason why consciousness exists. To love is to actively participate in creation, and to create is the ultimate purpose of all existence. Years continued passing. Daniel aged. His movements became slower, but his clarity only increased. He stopped fixing cars eventually, hands too tired, but he continued fixing people, or rather creating space where people could fix themselves by realizing they were never broken, just disconnected. In his last year, very old now and sick, Lying in a simple bed in a house he once shared with Maria, and now shared with silence and memories, Daniel held the crystal one more time. He had no fear of death. How could he? He had seen that death was just a door, just transition. Body would dissolve, but consciousness would continue, returning to the infinite ocean from which it came, carrying experiences of this life like unique pearls that would enrich the whole. Maria was there when he died. She held his hand. She said later that in the final moment, Daniel smiled, and soft light like a private dawn emanated from his body for seconds before fading. The crystal was in his hand when they found him, and when Maria touched it, she felt a pulse, not a heartbeat, a pulse of something greater. Living memory, love compressed into physical form. She kept it, passed it to others, and it continues being passed, tangible whisper of truth that does not fit.